Tonight, let the word mummy arrive softly, like a feather settling on a quiet windowsill. Not as a monster from a loud screen, not as a curse that snaps you awake, but as a careful human answer to something every heart eventually meets: separation, longing, and love that wants to keep holding on. If you're listening after a full day, with your shoulders still carrying the shape of meetings and messages, you don't need to be brave here. You only need to be present in the gentlest way, or in the way you might sit beside someone you care about and simply breathe. So take a slow inhale as if you're drawing in warm air from a lamp-lit room, and let the exhale go like a small boat released onto a still river. Let your jaw loosen, let your tongue rest, let your eyes grow heavy if they remain open. You can listen like you listen to rain, without effort. Before we drift deeper into tonight's gentle journey, remember to subscribe to Ancient Sleep Story. Here, you'll always find peaceful stories that soothe the heart and quiet the mind. Where are you listening from tonight? Leave a comment. Your presence adds warmth to this quiet corner of the night. Out beyond your walls, imagine a desert night that does not demand anything from you. The sand is cool now, no longer sharp with noon heat. It lies in soft folds like linen smoothed across a bed. Above it, the sky is wide and patient, and the stars do what they've always done. They shine without hurrying. In that quiet landscape, far from traffic and glowing screens, there is a shape that once held light, the way calm water holds the moon. Long ago, the Great Pyramid at Giza was not the color you see in most photographs today. It was dressed in pale limestone, carefully fitted and polished, so smooth it could catch the sun and throw it back, a gentle brightness across the horizon. In the day, it could feel like a perfect triangle of light. At dawn and dusk, it could soften into pearl. And when evening arrived, when torches became little stars along the edge of stone, the pyramid did not feel like a threat. It felt like a promise that time could be given a shape, a promise that love could be organized into ritual, a promise that even grief could be held, wrapped, and carried with tenderness. If we disregard movies for a moment, what do you think people in the past saw through their eyes when they viewed death? Not the special effects, not the dramatic music, just the real, ordinary scene. A room growing quiet, a hand cooling, a family pausing, unsure what to do with all the love that suddenly has nowhere to land. Across centuries and continents, humans have always tried to answer that moment. Sometimes with prayer, sometimes with song, sometimes with a simple act of washing and wrapping. In ancient Egypt, the answer became a kind of slow care that moved like a tide, steady and repeating. The people of the Nile lived close to cycles. They watched the sun return again and again, as reliably as breath. They watched the river swell and recede, leaving dark, rich soil behind, as if the land itself knew how to begin again. They watched plants wilt and then, after a time, send up new green. If you have ever stood outside at night and felt your own worries shrink beneath the sky, you already understand the doorway they stood in. They did not see life as a single straight line. They felt it as a circle, a rhythm, a turning. And in that turning, they imagined that what ends might also return. Changed, yes, but not erased. One of their great symbols of this was Osiris, a presence tied to passing away and renewal, to the mystery of what lies beyond the horizon. Tonight we won't chase the myth with loud steps. We will simply let it glow in the background like a small candle placed safely on a shelf. When the Egyptians prepared a body, they were not only preserving flesh, they were building a bridge for memory, They were creating a place where the person who had been loved could continue to be held in the mind, in the family, in the story. They used materials that belonged to warmth and living, fragrant resins, honeyed sweetness, incense that curled through air like a slow thought. They used natron, a kind of salt that dried and protected, as if the desert itself had lent them its quiet skill. They used linen, layer after layer, soft and patient, like the repeated reassurance of someone saying, "You are not alone." The process took time, so much time that it became its own kind of meditation. Each day a small repetition, each step an offering of attention. And then there was the tomb, not a dark pit, not an ending, but a room arranged with care. A furnished space, a forever apartment, where order and comfort could continue. It held jars and vessels, little objects of daily life, placed as if someone might reach for them later. It held clothing folded in the imagination, linens, scarves, things that speak of warmth against skin. It held jewelry that caught torchlight with a quiet shimmer. It held fans of feathers, the idea of cool air in a hot world. Sometimes it even held a game board, because even in their most serious thoughts about eternity, people still remembered play. All of it was a gentle message sent forward in time. You will have what you need. You will be accompanied. Tonight, you and I will walk through those rooms very slowly. We will do it with the softness of bare feet on a cool floor. We will look at painted walls where colors still breathe after thousands of years. We will listen for the hush that lives inside stone. And as we go, we will keep returning to one simple truth. Much of what survives from the past is not violence, but care. Not conquest, but the quiet wish to protect what is loved. Now let the scene widen again. Picture the Nile at night, not as a map line, but as a living ribbon of darkness reflecting a trembling band of moonlight. On its banks, palms stand still, their fronds barely moving, as if they are listening too. Somewhere, a distant boat slides through the water with almost no sound. The oars dip, lift, and drip, and the rhythm is so slow it could match your breathing. In the villages, lamps glow low, and people speak in the kind of voices that don't need to be loud to be understood. Farther away, the desert begins. And beyond the desert, the stone structures rise, temples, mastabas, and the pyramids, shapes made from patience. You can imagine workers long ago, not as faceless crowds, but as individuals in morning light, sharing water, sharing bread, adjusting a rope, steadying a load. You can imagine architects watching shadows, learning from the sun, trusting the sky to teach them direction. Their world was not quiet because it lacked life. It was quiet because life moved with the seasons, with heat, with the river's timing. In that kind of world, it made sense to build with rhythm. To make a ceremony that lasted days, to repeat a prayer, to fold linen again and again. And so the question returns, gentle and unhurried. What were they really doing when they preserved a body? They were making sure a person could be recognized. They were making sure a name could be remembered. They were protecting a story from dissolving into the dark. In their language, the idea of the name, your Ren, was not a casual label. It was a thread that tied your being to the living world. To speak a name was to keep a light on. To forget a name was to let the lamp go out. If you've ever feared being forgotten, even in a small way, an unread message, a birthday missed, a moment that passed without witness, then you understand the tenderness hidden inside all those ancient rituals. It was not only about the dead, it was also about the living, who needed to place their love somewhere safe. And perhaps quietly, it was about the future too. About you, because here you are, listening now, letting those old rooms open again in your imagination, keeping their stories warm. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. So, settle your head a little deeper into your pillow. Let your jaw loosen. Let your forehead smooth. Imagine the air in the room becoming slightly warmer, as if a torch far away has been carried closer. But only the warmth reaches you, not the glare. In a moment, we will approach a doorway, not a doorway that slams, a doorway that yields, slowly, with the soft scrape of stone and the hush of dust. Somewhere in the early 20th century, in a valley of sand and silence, hands brushed debris away from a sealed entrance, not with panic, not with shouting, but with the careful patience of people who know that history is fragile. Behind that sealed threshold lay a space untouched for a very long time, arranged like a private room waiting in the dark. A young king rested there, surrounded by objects that still held the shape of daily life. And when the last grains of sand fell away, the first breath of that ancient air moved outward, as if the past itself exhaled. That breath felt gentle, like dawn over water. We won't rush toward that opening. We'll walk to it the way you walk into a dim room at night, one step at a time, letting your eyes adjust. We'll let the torchlight flicker on gold, on painted plaster, on folded linen, and we'll ask, with the calm curiosity of someone tracing a familiar photograph, what does it mean to be cared for even after goodbye? The doorway in the sand does not open like a stage curtain. It opens the way a memory opens, slowly, quietly, with a little hesitation, as if it wants to make sure you are gentle enough to enter. So tonight, let your mind step softly. Let your breathing stay easy, in and out, like a lantern swinging in a calm hand. We are in the Valley of the Kings now, where the cliffs hold the day's warmth for a long time after sunset, and then surrender it little by little to the night. The stone is pale, the sand is fine, and the silence feels almost alive, like it is listening for anything careless and rewarding anything kind. A small group of people works by daylight, and when darkness comes, they rest. Their tools are simple, their movements are patient. There is no rush that belongs to modern life. There is only the slow, steady attention you give to something delicate. When the sealed entrance is finally revealed, it does not feel like a break-in. It feels like finding a letter that was meant to be opened at the right time. Inside, air that has been sleeping for centuries meets the world again. It doesn't roar outward, it doesn't threaten, it just slips past the threshold, cool and dry. As gentle as the first breath you take when you step into a quiet museum hall. If you can, imagine that moment without drama. Imagine it as a soft change in temperature. A faint scent of dust and something sweeter underneath, old resin, old linen, old wood, and then light, not blazing light, not the harsh light of a phone screen, a warm, trembling torchlight that touches objects one by one, like a hand moving across a shelf in the dark. There are shapes that look familiar in the most comforting way. A bed, not as a symbol, but as a real thing, wooden, crafted, waiting, boxes stacked with order, jars with rounded shoulders, a chair with arms that curve like a patient embrace. There are small, human signs of a life that once had mornings and evenings. A pair of sandals, a staff, a comb, a little container that could have held oil, meant for skin, meant for softness. Somewhere there is a game board, quiet proof that even in the presence of eternity, people still wanted to pass time gently, move a piece forward, and smile. The room is not shouting about power, it is whispering about care. The young king who lies beyond these objects is not speaking to us tonight as a legend. He is simply a person, held in a careful stillness, surrounded by what his world believed could keep him from being lonely. And if you listen closely, you might notice something simple that changes the whole feeling of the place. It is the same simple feeling you get when you see a loved one's coat hung neatly by the door, or a cup washed and placed upside down on a towel. Someone was thinking of tomorrow. Someone was preparing. Someone was saying, in their own quiet way, "This matters." Let your shoulders drop a little more. Let the space behind your eyes soften. If your thoughts are busy, you do not have to chase them. You can let them drift like sand in a slow wind. Because from this room, our story widens. It widens beyond one tomb, beyond one king, beyond one valley. It widens to the long Egyptian habit of preparing a gentle passage. In the world along the Nile, the dead were not treated as a sudden disappearance. They were treated as travelers, and the living did what the living often do when someone they love must travel. They packed, they labeled, they folded, they organized comfort. If you've ever packed a small bag for a child, an extra shirt, a snack, something familiar to hold, then you already understand the emotion hidden inside those ancient chambers. Not fear, not spectacle, just the wish to care well. And so, somewhere beyond the torchlight, we can begin to feel the rhythm of the work that happened before a tomb became quiet. It began with washing, with cleaning the body as if it were still part of the household. There were hands that lifted gently, hands that knew how to be respectful. There was water, cool against skin, and cloth, soft against bone. Then came drying, the steady, patient act of letting moisture leave so that what remained could endure. Natron, the desert salt, was used as a kind of protection. It was practical, yes, but it also carried a symbolic calm. The desert itself had taught people how to preserve. And through it all, scent, resin, sticky, golden, sweet. Oil, smooth and warm. Incense, smoke that rose like a slow prayer, curling, fading, returning. If you've ever smelled a candle with a hint of cedar, or opened a drawer that holds an old scarf, you know how scent can unlock time. In those ancient rooms, scent was not decoration, it was comfort. It was the atmosphere of care. Then came linen, linen upon linen, not hurried, not careless. A soft repetition, wrap, smooth, tie, wrap again. This is the part of the story where the modern mind sometimes tries to wake up and judge. But tonight we will not judge. Tonight we will simply notice the tenderness in the repetition, because repetition is one of the oldest forms of soothing. A lullaby repeats, waves repeat, breathing repeats. And in grief, repeating a careful action can be a way of saying, I am still here, I am still loving, I am still holding. There were words spoken too, quiet words, murmured words. Not to frighten, not to impress, but to guide, to reassure, to mark the steps of a passage the way you might count gentle breaths in the dark. Some of those words were written later on walls, not as loud commands, but as gentle directions. A map made of paint and poetry. If you imagine those painted corridors, think of mineral colors, ochre like warm earth, blue like deep water, green like new growth. Think of torchlight making the colors pulse softly as if the walls themselves are breathing. And there is another layer, even softer. The idea that the tomb was not only for the one who died, it was for the ones who remained. Because the living needed a place to set their love down. They needed a structure where memory could rest without falling apart. They needed a room that could hold what the heart could not carry all at once. Now, in that sense, A tomb can feel like a very old version of what we do now. We keep photographs, we keep messages, we keep a favorite sweater that still smells faintly like the person, we keep a recipe written in someone's handwriting, we keep a voicemail we can't delete. These are not signs of weakness, they are signs of attachment. They are proof that love has weight, and we look for shelves strong enough to hold it. If tonight's story reminded you of a beautiful memory, feel free to share it below. And if you don't want to share, you can simply let that memory sit beside you like a quiet friend. Now let's return to the tomb, to the room that waited. Imagine stepping deeper, past the first threshold, into narrower corridors where the air is cooler and the sound of footsteps becomes softer. Dust rises gently and settles again. The stone under your hand feels smooth in some places, rough in others, as if time has been slowly sanding it. Somewhere ahead, there is a wall painted with figures moving in a calm procession. Not chaotic, not violent, orderly, intentional. A story drawn to guide someone through darkness. And here, a small, quiet thought arrives, one that feels like the beginning of a soft discovery. What if these images were never meant to impress strangers? What if they were meant to calm the traveler? What if, in the deepest parts of the earth, the dead were given something like what you are giving yourself right now? A steady voice, a familiar rhythm, a feeling of being accompanied. In the ancient world, there were other ways the earth kept bodies too. Sometimes cold did it, sometimes dryness, sometimes the simple absence of air. In far places and far times, people found the preserved dead and mistook them, at first, for someone recent, because the face still held a human quiet. Time, it seems, can be gentle as well as fierce. It can erase, and sometimes it can cradle. Back in the workshops nearer the river, the work of caring would unfold in a rhythm that felt like prayer. For a long stretch of days, tradition speaks of 70, the body was tended with the same steadiness you might use to fold clean sheets. Natron drew away moisture, leaving the silence of dryness. Linen followed, strip after strip, warm in the hands, each layer smoothed as if to say, rest. Resins and fragrant oils sealed the edges, the scent of cedar and myrrh lingering like a remembered hug. Nothing about it needed speed, it was repetition, and repetition can be mercy. Even now, when you save a photograph or keep a note in a drawer, you are doing a small version of the same thing, refusing to let tenderness vanish. And if you need that permission tonight, let it be yours, without questions. Tonight, we are following the cradle. We are following the parts of history that speak softly. We are letting the past lower our pulse instead of raising it. So take another slow breath in, out. Ahead, the corridor turns, and beyond that turn, there is a door sealed with care. Behind it, the walls are said to carry words like lanterns, lines that do not shout, but glow. A map, a name, a promise. And when we open that door very gently, very slowly, we will begin to read the past the way the past wanted to be read. Not as a riddle to solve tonight, but as a path to walk, one calm step at a time. The door opens the way a night flower opens, without sound, without hurry, with the calm confidence of something that has waited long enough. Inside, the corridor narrows and the air changes. It becomes cooler, drier, and strangely clean, as if the stone has been filtering time itself. Torchlight does not fill the space all at once. It moves in gentle circles, touching one surface, then another, making the darkness feel less like an enemy and more like a soft blanket drawn higher around the shoulders. On the walls, color appears. Not the loud color of modern screens, but mineral color, earth and sky turned into paint. Ochre like sun-warmed sand, deep blue like evening water, green like the first leaf after heat, black lines, steady and sure, guiding the eye the way a handrail guides a tired traveler. At first, you may think of these images as art, but stay a little longer and the feeling changes. The walls begin to feel like a map for someone who is not walking with feet, but with memory. Here is a boat drawn long and calm, as if it is floating on a river that exists in the mind. Here are stars arranged with the familiar patience of the sky. Here are figures carrying offerings, not to impress, not to perform, but to say in picture language, we remembered, we prepared, we came with kindness. If your day has been crowded, allow this corridor to be spacious inside you. Let the images arrive slowly one by one. You do not have to hold every detail. Just let the atmosphere wash over you like warm water over hands. In ancient Egypt, writing could be a kind of magic, but not the loud kind, the quiet kind, the kind that comforts, the kind that keeps a person from feeling lost. Some tomb texts were written as guidance, like directions whispered at a crossroads. Some were protective, like a shawl placed over shoulders. Some were prayers, like a steady hum in the dark. And among the most gentle ideas was this: a name is not just a label. A name is a home. They called it Ren, the name that holds your identity in the world of the living. To speak a name was to keep it warm. To carve a name was to give it a place to rest. To erase a name was to let it fade into cold distance. Tonight, you don't need to believe every ancient belief to feel the tenderness inside it. You only need to notice how human it is, because what do we do even now when someone matters to us? We say their name, we write it in messages, we save it in contacts, we speak it softly into voicemail. We whisper it when we are alone, just to feel the person close again. In that corridor of painted stone, the Egyptians were doing something similar, only with tools that could last longer than paper. As you move deeper, imagine the walls offering you a steady rhythm. Each panel is a breath, each line is a step. There is no sudden twist, no sharp surprise. Only the slow revelation that these tombs were designed to soothe as much as to preserve. Sometimes the images show everyday scenes, bread being made, fields being tended, water being carried, a reminder that life, even in eternity, might feel familiar, that the afterlife was not imagined as chaos, but as a continuation of order. Sometimes the images show the journey itself, gates, guardians, stars, boats, not as horror, but as orientation. In a modern city, we use streetlights and signs. In an ancient tomb, they used paint and words, different tools, same hope, that no one should wander alone. And as that thought settles, a small tenderness rises in your chest, perhaps without you asking it to, the tenderness of being guided. If you're listening late and you've ever felt the quiet loneliness of night, remember this. Humans have been leaving lanterns for each other for a very long time. Some lanterns are stories, some are songs, some are names written carefully on stone. Here, no one rests alone. And if your mind wonders what it felt like to stand beside the Nile in a simpler hour, imagine this: a small evening market fading into quiet. Clay lamps flicker. Someone folds a woven mat. A child leans into a parent's shoulder. In the distance, temple columns hold the last color of sunset, like cooled embers. The air smells faintly of bread, river water, and sweet smoke. A dog settles, turning once, then twice, and finally resting. Farther out, the desert waits, wide and patient. A last boat glides by, its oar dipping softly, and the river answers very quietly with small rings of light that widen, then disappear. Night arrives gently and the first stars open overhead. Above all of it, the same stars appear, steady and unbothered, and you can almost feel your own life becoming smaller, softer, held inside that unhurried sky for you tonight. Now let the corridor widen again in your imagination until you can feel the larger landscape that shaped these beliefs. Picture the Nile in the season when it swells, the banks soften, the water carries a dark richness that will later become fields of green. Boats move slowly, loaded with grain. With jars, with people sitting close together under cloth shade. The river is a moving road, and it teaches the mind a gentle lesson. Traveling can be steady. Distance can be crossed without panic. Along that river, stone traveled too. Not with a scream of engines, but with the patient pull of ropes, the creak of wood, the slow cooperation of many hands. Massive blocks could be shifted not by a single, heroic moment, but by day after day of careful work. And when you imagine that, try not to count. Don't let your mind turn it into a math problem. Let it be a mood, a long effort, guided by rhythm. Because rhythm is the hidden architecture of this entire story. The river rises and falls, the sun climbs and returns, the ceremony repeats, the linen wraps, the incense curls, the painted map continues panel by panel. Even your own body is built on rhythm, heartbeat, breath, the slow wave of sleep approaching. As you walk deeper into the imagined tomb, the torchlight catches small details, a curve of a hieroglyph, a careful feather, an eye drawn in profile. The figures are stylized, yes, but they are also intimate. They are meant to be read by the heart as much as the mind. Somewhere you pause before a wall that feels especially quiet. Perhaps it is the way the lines flow, perhaps it is the way the colors have softened, as if the stone has been gently breathing them for centuries. You think again of the young king's tomb, of the objects placed with such care. 3 nested layers of protection, like a lullaby repeated in deeper tones. A journey packed with supplies not because the dead demanded luxury, but because the living needed to say goodbye with tenderness. And now, a soft question forms, one you don't have to answer out loud. If you could pack comfort for your future self, what would you place in the bag? Maybe it would be something simple, a familiar scent, a note in your own handwriting, a photograph of a place that made you feel safe, a small object that fits in the palm and reminds you you have been loved. That is the emotional truth behind these rooms. They are not obsessed with death. They are devoted to continuity. And this is where our story offers a gentle discovery, the kind that does not wake you, but settles you deeper. What if the pyramid itself, once bright as a mirror, was not only a monument to power, but a lighthouse for the mind, a shape that caught the sun and returned it? A triangle that held the horizon steady, a bright point that said, even from far away, there is order here, there is direction, there is a path. In the daytime, it shone. At dusk, it glowed, and at night, it became a dark silhouette against the stars, still present, still calm, still pointing upward. If you are someone who carries worry, you know how soothing it can be to have a landmark, a steady thing you can look for, a sign that you are not lost. In that sense, the Egyptians built landmarks not only in the desert, but in the imagination. Painted walls, spoken names, ritual repetition, a whole architecture of reassurance. And yet, even with all that careful planning, the past keeps one gentle secret. It is never fully finished. Even inside the Great Pyramid, even inside the stone that seems most complete, there can be empty space. Quiet voids that no one named for thousands of years. Not a dramatic hole, not a dangerous cavity, but a silence inside the rock. In recent years, scientists learned to listen for such silence without breaking the stone. They used particles that pass through the world the way moonlight passes through thin curtains, leaving traces that can be gathered with patience. It was not a loud discovery, it was a quiet one. A reminder that the greatest structures still contain mystery, and that mystery does not need to frighten us. Mystery can be a lullaby too, a soft acceptance that not everything must be solved tonight. So as you rest here at the edge of painted corridors and silent pyramids, let your mind do what the ancient river does. Flow. Let your thoughts drift downstream. Let the day's noise dissolve. Let the images remain, not as facts to memorize, but as a gentle landscape you can return to whenever you need calm. Because in a moment, we will follow one more path out of the tomb and back into the open night, where the desert wind moves like a hand across sand, and where another discovery waits, not in gold, but in the simple feeling of shade. Imagine leaving the cool corridor behind you the way you leave a quiet room after a long conversation, slowly, almost reluctantly, carrying the calm with you. The torchlight fades. The stone walls widen into the open. And then, suddenly, there is sky again. The night air feels different when you step into it. It has more space in it. It carries a faint dryness, a whisper of mineral dust. If there is a breeze, it does not push. It only passes like a hand smoothing the surface of a blanket. Above you, the stars are still there, steady, distant, unmoved by the centuries we just walked through. And out here, the desert looks the way rest feels, vast, quiet, simple. The sand does not glitter, it does not demand to be admired. It lies in gentle slopes with shadows that stretch long and soft under the moon. Every dune looks like a slow wave that paused mid-motion. If you've been holding tension in your body, let the dunes teach you something. They do not fight the wind, they yield, they reshape, they remain. Now in the distance, imagine the silhouette of a pyramid. Not glowing white as it once did, but still holding its patient, triangular form. It stands as a kind of steady thought, a landmark, a reminder of order. And somewhere beyond it, closer to where the river once ran, there is another story. A story that feels like a secret, not because it is scary, but because it is hidden in plain sight. Long ago, there were waterways that helped shape Egypt's most famous places. Channels that carried boats and stones, seasonal branches that shifted as the land changed. The Nile itself has never been a single frozen line. It has wandered gently across history, leaving behind traces like soft handwriting. Sometimes, the desert covers those traces the way a blanket covers footprints, but the traces remain. Under sand that looks still, there can be the memory of water, and that idea, water beneath sand, feels strangely comforting because it suggests that life can be present even when you cannot see it. That movement can be happening even when the surface appears quiet. Tonight, let that be a small kindness to your nervous system. If your mind is tired, if you feel like nothing is moving forward, remember, not all progress is visible. Some of it happens underground in silence, the way seeds prepare beneath soil. Now picture the Nile in its softer hours. Not at noon when everything is bright and sharp, but at dawn when the river is a ribbon of pale silver and the air is cool enough to make you pull a shawl closer. Birds cross low. The surface of the water holds reflections like fragile glass. On a boat, the day begins quietly. Someone adjusts a rope. Someone pours water into a clay cup. Someone sits with knees drawn up, watching the sky lighten. In that world, transporting stone was not only engineering, it was patience, it was trust in the river's rhythm, it was cooperation. the slow teamwork that happens when people know there is no need to rush the sun. Imagine large blocks moving not with violence, but with steadiness. Boats creaking softly. Water lapping the hull. Men and women speaking in low voices the way you speak when you don't want to disturb someone sleeping nearby. A stone block slides into place and the sound is not a crash. It is a low, dull thud that settles quickly, swallowed by sand and distance. The ancient landscape is full of these quiet sounds. The hush of cloth, the brush of reeds, the creak of wood, the soft cough of dust in warm air. If you listen closely, you can feel how this history was built in a tempo that matches bedtime more than battle. And now allow another soft discovery to arrive. The greatest stories are not always hidden behind locked doors. Sometimes they are hidden in emptiness. In the Great Pyramid, there are spaces that are still not fully named, places that are simply quiet. When modern scientists found signs of an unknown void, it wasn't with dynamite or force. It was with listening with particles that pass through stone without breaking it, the way a thought passes through a dream. There is something deeply soothing about that method. It says, you don't have to destroy to understand. You can be gentle and still learn. And that same lesson can apply to your own inner world. You don't have to tear yourself apart to figure out why you're tired. You can listen, you can notice, you can soften. If tonight you are carrying worries, let them be like that hidden chamber. Present, perhaps, but not urgent. You do not need to open every door right now. You are allowed to sleep while some mysteries remain mysteries. Now keep walking with me, not deeper into tombs, but across the surface of the desert. There is a faint path, almost invisible. The sand is smoother here, as if many feet once passed and the wind later erased their prints. The night is cool, the sky is wide, and ahead there is a shift in the air. At first, you barely notice it, then you feel it like relief, shade. A corridor of green appears where you don't expect it, an avenue of trees planted in a line, bringing a soft darkness into a bright world. It is the kind of place that makes your body exhale without thinking. The leaves move gently, the branches form a canopy. The air underneath is cooler, carrying a faint scent of sap and earth. Step into it in your imagination. The desert behind you remains, but it no longer presses. The heat recedes, your shoulders drop, your breath slows. The avenue is not dramatic, it is simply kind, and that is the point. In the same way the Egyptians built tombs as a kind of shelter for memory, a green avenue is a shelter for the body. A reminder that humans have always tried to create pockets of comfort in harsh landscapes. If your life feels like a desert sometimes, bright, demanding, full of deadlines, then perhaps you too need a green avenue. A small routine that lowers your temperature inside, a soft ritual that brings shade. It could be a cup of tea at night, a slow walk without headphones, a lamp instead of overhead lights, a voice telling you a story gently until your mind loosens. That is what we are building together right now, a shaded path through time. And as you rest in that shade, another thought arrives, softer than the last. The Egyptians were not only trying to defeat death, they were trying to keep love from feeling wasted. They placed food not to show off, but to say, "May you be nourished." They placed water not as symbolism alone, but as the most basic comfort. They placed games, jewelry, small familiar objects because familiarity itself is soothing. Their preparations were a way of saying, you will not go without care. If you need to hear that tonight, hear it now in a simple, modern voice. You deserve care too. Not only when you've earned it, not only when you've finished everything, but now, even in the middle of imperfect days, even with worries still open. Because the most healing truth is not complicated. The nervous system rests when it feels safe. So let the shade deepen. Let the sound of leaves replace the sound of traffic in your mind. Let the desert wind become a quiet whisper at the edge of your hearing. Let the stars remain steady overhead. We are moving toward a place where the story turns inward, where the past becomes a mirror for the present, where the ancient idea of a name, Ren, becomes a gentle invitation for you to remember your own life with kindness. In the next part, we will step back into the soft glow of lamps and speak, without urgency, about what it means to be remembered, and what it means to let go just enough to sleep. Stay with the shade for a little longer. Let the leaves above you move in their slow, patient way, like a lullaby you don't have to learn. If your body has been braced all day, shoulders lifted, stomach tight, thoughts racing, give yourself permission to soften now, as if you're loosening a scarf, as if you're untying a knot that doesn't need to be there tonight. Under this green corridor, the desert feels farther away. The air is cooler. The sounds are smaller. And in that smaller world, it becomes easier to hear what the ancients were really trying to say. Not be afraid, and not look how powerful we were, but something closer to remember. In ancient Egypt, remembrance was not only emotion, it was structure, it was architecture, it was ink and stone and linen and scent. It was the careful decision to keep a person present, gently present, inside the lives of those who remained. They had a word for the name that carries you, Ren. A name, to them, was more than a sound. It was a place your spirit could return to, like a familiar porch light in the dark. To speak it was to keep it warm. To write it was to give it a bed. To preserve it was to say, you still belong. Sometimes the name appeared everywhere, on a small seal, on a jar, on a necklace bead, on the edge of a coffin, on the plaster near the head. It was repeated the way you repeat an address on a package you cannot bear to lose. Underneath was a quiet fear, not of monsters, but of silence, of being unmoored. So families returned, they spoke, they poured a little water, they left a crumb of bread, not because the dead would eat the way we do, but because the living needed a rhythm, a way to say, again and again, you are still with us. In that returning, grief became less sharp. It became a gentle habit, like lighting a porch lamp at dusk, like smoothing a bedsheet before sleep, like placing a hand on your own chest and feeling the steady promise of your heart. Sometimes they lit a small flame and watched it breathe, and in that breathing, they found the courage to keep living gently today, too. If you're listening tonight with a quiet ache, maybe the ache of missing someone, or the ache of feeling unseen, this idea can land softly like a blanket laid across your chest, because it tells you something simple and kind. Being remembered is a form of care, and perhaps that is why the tomb was arranged like a home. Food and water, not as theatrical offerings, but as the language of ordinary comfort. Cloth and oil, the language of warmth. A fan, the language of relief. A small game board, the language of play. Even in the face of mystery, they kept returning to familiar things. You can feel the same instinct in yourself. When you're exhausted, you don't crave a lecture. You crave something known, a mug that fits your hand, a lamp that makes the room golden, a voice that doesn't rush you. So tonight, let the story become that lamp. Imagine a quiet workshop near the river. The day is fading, the heat is easing. A door stands open to let in the last pale light. Inside, a few people move with practiced gentleness. There is linen folded in stacks, clean and soft. There are jars with dark, fragrant resin. There is a bowl of oil that catches the light like amber. No one here is performing for strangers. No one is shouting. There is only the slow work of tending. In another room, someone traces a name. A brush moves carefully, making lines that will last. Each stroke is patient, like writing a letter to the future. And in that future, the name will still be readable, a small miracle of continuity. Now let your mind drift just a little to another kind of image, one that feels especially tender. In some places, long after the age of pyramids, people in Egypt placed painted portraits with the dead, faces rendered with soft realism, eyes looking outward, not haunted, not angry, simply human. Sometimes the portraits feel as if they were made while the person still lived, as if to say, "This is how I looked when I laughed, when I listened, when I loved." When you imagine those portraits, notice how calm they are. They do not ask you to fear the dead, they ask you to recognize them. A face is a powerful kind of name. It carries the shape of a life. It says, "I was here." And if you meet it with gentleness, it can say something else too. You are here. If you want, take a slow breath in. And on the exhale, let your gaze soften behind your eyelids, as if you are looking at a candle through thin curtains. There is a quiet wisdom in the way these ancient people made room for memory. They understood that grief is not a problem to solve. It is a landscape to walk through, and walking through a landscape requires landmarks. A name, a portrait, a story, a ritual repeated until the heart can accept what the mind cannot yet hold. In modern life, we often treat memory like a burden. We try to move on quickly. We rush to be productive again. We act as if tenderness should have an expiration date. But the night has always known a different truth. Some feelings need darkness and time to soften. So if you are carrying anything tonight, any loss, any regret, any unfinished conversation, let it rest beside you without demands. You do not have to open it fully, you only have to allow it to be held. The ancient tombs were places of holding. Stone held air, walls held color, linen held form, and names held presence. And here is another soft discovery, one that can soothe rather than startle. Even the greatest monuments were not built only for kings. Across the world, across long ages, ordinary people also tried to keep their loved ones close. Sometimes the earth itself did the preserving, cold mountain wind, dry sand, sealed peat. Sometimes nature cradled a body so gently that when it was found later, people thought at first it belonged to the present. Time can be confusing like that. Time can fold. But when you look past the surprise, what remains is always the same human impulse: to keep a place for love. Back under the trees, you can feel this impulse in your own chest. Maybe you keep an old photograph. Maybe you remember a voice. Maybe there is a sentence someone once said to you that still lights up when you need it most. Those are your own small tomb paintings, your own lanterns. And that brings us to a question that is gentle enough for bedtime. If your life were a corridor of painted stone, what would you want on the walls? Not accomplishments, not headlines, but small, true scenes. A kitchen at dusk, a friend's laughter, a drive with music low. A hand held quietly. A moment of forgiveness, a moment of being forgiven. These are the images that soothe the heart. These are the images that let the body unclench. And perhaps this is the deeper point of the Egyptian forever apartment. It was not trying to deny endings. It was trying to keep the goodness of life organized and close, so it would not scatter. Now let's step back into a tomb again, but not to frighten ourselves, to notice the care in the details. The stone hallway is cool, your footsteps are soft. Torchlight flickers gently, making painted birds seem to hover for an instant, then settle back into stillness. On the walls there are rows of symbols, some like reeds, some like water, some like hands. Not a code you must solve tonight, just a quiet assurance that meaning can live in marks. Somewhere in the chamber, a name is repeated, not like an advertisement, like a lullaby. Ren. The repetition is calming. It is the same calm you feel when you repeat a reassuring phrase to yourself. I'm safe. I'm here. This moment will pass. If you're an American listener with a busy life, commutes, screens, responsibilities, this is the place where the ancient world can meet you kindly. Because the ancient message is not work harder to be remembered. It is, let love be enough. The Egyptians placed water because water is enough. They placed bread because bread is enough. They placed light because light is enough. Tonight, you don't need to become extraordinary. You only need to let yourself be human. If this story brought you calm, leave a gentle comment for yourself. Not a performance, just a small note, like placing a smooth stone on a windowsill. And if you don't want to comment, you can still receive the same comfort quietly. Your listening is already a kind of presence. Now, as we move toward the end of this part, let your breathing slow again. Imagine the green avenue fading behind you. Imagine the desert returning, but softer now. Imagine the pyramid on the horizon as a dark, steady triangle beneath the stars. And in your own room, wherever you are, let one thought settle like dust in a sunbeam. You will not be forgotten in the ways that matter. Not by the people who truly loved you. Not by the parts of you that are still learning to love yourself. Not by the quiet corner of the night where stories are told gently and where names become lanterns. Let your shoulders sink. Let your hands relax. Let your mind drift toward sleep the way the Nile drifts toward the sea. Without struggle, without hurry, simply going where it is meant to go. In the next part, we will return to the desert night and listen for something even softer than a name, the sound of time itself, moving like wind over sand, asking nothing from you except rest. The desert at night is not empty, it is simply uncluttered. When the sun lets go, the sand cools down the way your body cools down when you finally stop answering the day. Heat leaves in thin layers, and what remains is a gentle stillness, wide enough to hold even the busiest mind. Picture yourself outside now at a comfortable distance from the ancient stone. You don't need to climb, you don't need to solve. You can just stand and let the wide sky do what it has always done. Lower your pulse by reminding you how large the world is and how small your worries can become when you stop feeding them. A slow wind moves across the surface of the dunes. It does not roar. It doesn't yank at anything. It simply brushes. Grain after grain shifts, and the desert changes its face without effort, as if it has never been attached to any one shape. If your thoughts have felt stuck today, let the sand teach you this. Change can be gentle. It can happen without drama. It can happen while you rest. Somewhere behind you, the pyramids stand as dark triangles. Their edges cut the sky in a way that feels steady. In daylight, they can seem monumental. At night, they seem quieter, less like statements, more like silhouettes, like sleeping animals in the distance. And in that quiet, another kind of monument becomes visible, the space between things, the gaps, the empty corridors, the chambers that hold nothing but air. It is a strange comfort to realize that even the most solid stone contains emptiness. Not a broken emptiness, a purposeful one, a space left for breath. Ancient builders understood something we often forget in modern life. Not everything needs to be filled. A room can feel sacred because it is quiet. A pause can be meaningful because it is a pause. An unanswered question can be safe if it is allowed to rest. If you are the kind of person who tries to fill every gap, every silence with a message, every uncertainty with a plan, let the desert give you a softer option tonight. You can leave some things unfilled. You can let them be. You can allow your mind to be a room with the lights turned low. Far to the south, the river continues its long work. Even when you cannot see it, you can imagine its presence. Water, moving in a patient line, shaping banks, feeding fields, carrying small boats, reflecting the moon. Egypt's story has always been braided with water, and yet there are times when water disappears from sight and still remains true. Old channels buried under sand, remembered only by the way the land dips, by the way the soil changes color, by the way certain plants stubbornly grow where they shouldn't. There is a gentle lesson in that. What nourished you once may still be near you, even if it feels far away. Now come with me in your imagination to a place that carries a quieter kind of power. Abydos. It is not always as loud in modern conversation as Giza. It does not demand your attention with a single silhouette. But it has a hush that feels deep, like a library after midnight. Abydos was a sacred landscape, a place of pilgrimage, and a place where people came to feel close to Osiris, close to the turning of life and death, close to the idea that endings are not only endings. In the earth there, archaeologists have found very early royal tombs. Some are marked with names, some, more mysteriously, are not. Imagine walking into a chamber and finding not a hoard of gold, not a dramatic threat, but a blankness where a name should be, a missing label, a silence carved into history. At first, the modern mind wants to rush in with theories, it wants to win an argument, it wants to fill the quiet, but tonight we will do something else. We will do what the desert does, we will soften around it, because a missing name can be its own kind of comfort. It reminds us that not everything is for us to possess. Some parts of the past remain private, some stories remain folded, and there is a mercy in that. Think of someone you love. You do not need to know every thought they ever had in order to love them. Love does not require complete information. It requires presence, care, and a willingness to be gentle with what you cannot see. So, if a tomb at Abydos holds an unnamed space, we can look at it the way we'd look at the night sky. With respect, with curiosity, and without the need to turn it into noise. This might be the softest discovery of all. Sometimes the greatest treasure is not what we find, but how quietly we learn to stand beside what we do not find. Let that idea settle. If there is something in your life that feels unanswered, an ending that did not come with closure, a relationship that faded without explanation, a dream that changed shape, perhaps it is okay that it remains unnamed for now. Perhaps it can rest. Perhaps you can rest. The ancient world offers another wide, calming perspective too. Egypt was not alone in its wish to preserve what was loved. Far across the world, in places with different skies and different rivers, people also tried to keep their dead close. Along a dry coast in what is now Chile and Peru, the Chinchorro people practiced careful forms of preservation long before the age of pyramids. It wasn't about kings, it was about community. It was about not letting tenderness vanish. And in cold mountain passes, the earth itself sometimes did the preserving, keeping a traveler in ice, so that centuries later, someone might briefly mistake the past for the present. Time can fold like that. None of these stories need to feel eerie tonight. Instead, let them feel like a shared human truth. Across ages, people have wanted to care well, to keep a bond, to say, in a language deeper than words, you mattered. And this returns us to Ren, the name as a lantern. If preservation is a way of holding, A name is a way of guiding. In Egyptian thought, the name helped the spirit find its way. You don't have to accept every ancient belief to receive the comfort of the image. You can take it as a metaphor for your own life. What name guides you back to yourself when you feel lost? Maybe it's the name of a place, a quiet beach, a grandmother's kitchen, a street you walked on autumn evenings. Maybe it's the name of a person who made you feel safe. Maybe tonight it is your own name, spoken kindly without judgment. Try it softly in your mind, as if you are placing it on a pillow. Not as a demand, as a reassurance. Now, return with me once more to the pyramids as shapes in darkness. Long ago, the outer casing of limestone caught the last sun and held it, like a mirror, like a moon, a steady brightness at the edge of the world. Over time, stone was taken, weathered, changed. The surface became rougher, the shine faded, and yet the pyramid remained. This is another gentle lesson you can borrow tonight. You do not need to stay polished to remain meaningful. You can be weathered, you can be tired, you can have edges that are not perfect anymore, and still you can stand, still you can belong. If you have been hard on yourself lately, let the ancient stone correct you with its quiet presence. Survival is not a performance. It is a continuation. And now listen, really listen, with the inner ear that hears beyond sound. The wind moves across sand, and it makes a faint hush, like a hand brushing across linen. It is the same kind of sound as linen being smoothed in a workshop, the same kind of sound as pages turning in a library, the same kind of sound as breath moving through your throat when you stop speaking and begin resting. Time has a sound. It is not ticking, it is sighing. Let your body match it. Release your shoulders. Let your hands open. Let your tongue rest. Allow the muscles around your eyes to soften. If you want a gentle practice to carry with you, here is one that belongs to both ancient ritual and modern bedtime. Choose one thing you will not solve tonight. Just one. Set it down like a jar placed carefully on a shelf. Tell yourself, this can wait, and then let your breath become the only task. Maybe you're listening from a parking lot after a late shift, or from a quiet kitchen where the dishwasher hums, or from a bedroom where the rest of the house has finally gone still. Wherever you are, let this be a small sanctuary. You do not have to carry the whole world into sleep. You can set it down piece by piece the way ancient hands set down linen, the way a river sets down silt. If a thought returns, greet it kindly, then let it pass. If you feel alone, remember, somewhere another listener is breathing with you under another ceiling, under the same moon. Here, even silence can feel like company. If you wish, whisper one word of gratitude and let it soften everything tonight. In the next part, our story will move again, not toward louder discoveries, but toward deeper quiet. The long, repeating days of care, the kind that turns grief into rhythm and rhythm into peace. We will step into the 70-day gentleness of preparation, not as a list of steps, but as a lullaby of hands, cloth, scent, and patience. For now, stay under the night sky. Let the wind remember for you. Let the desert hold the parts of you that are tired. And let your mind begin to drift the way sand drifts, the way water drifts, the way sleep drifts, towards softness, towards stillness, toward rest. Let's return very gently to the workshops near the river, where night air cools the clay walls and a single lamp makes the room feel like a small island of warmth. Outside, the Nile moves with its old patience. Inside, everything is slower than the world you know. There are no notifications here, no clocks that demand. only the steady presence of hands that have learned how to be careful. If your mind is still holding the day, let it loosen now. You don't need to do anything. You only need to listen. In ancient Egypt, tradition spoke of 70 days, an unhurried span of time set aside for preparation, 70 sunrises, 70 sunsets, not because the heart demanded drama, but because care takes time. Tonight, we won't count, we won't turn it into a checklist. We will let it become a rhythm, like waves or breathing. Imagine the first day as a quiet beginning. The body is washed, not as a clinical act, but as a human one. The kind of washing you might do for someone you love when they are sick, when they are tired, when they can no longer do it themselves. Water touches skin, cloth follows, there is no hurry, there is dignity in the gentleness. The second day arrives, and the third and the fourth. Each day is similar, but not identical. Each day is another chance to do the work well. Natron, desert salt, waits in clean piles, pale as moonlight. It will draw away moisture and leave behind dryness, a kind of stillness that resists decay. Practical, yes, and yet even practicality can be soothing when it is done with devotion. You might imagine the workers speaking quietly. Perhaps they share small observations about the weather. Perhaps someone hums under their breath, the way you hum when you are folding laundry, and the repetition becomes calming. Perhaps there are pauses where no one speaks at all, and the silence feels respectful rather than awkward. There is an intimacy in repetitive care. It does not seek applause, does not rush toward an ending. It simply shows up again and again. And isn't that what you need sometimes too? Not a grand solution, not a dramatic transformation, just the steady reassurance that someone or some part of you will keep showing up. As the days pass, the workshop smells of things that feel strangely comforting. Resin, thick and sweet. Oils that glimmer faintly in bowls. Incense, smoke that rises in slow spirals and fades into the rafters like a gentle thought dissolving into sleep. If you've ever walked into a room where someone has been baking bread or where a candle has been burning for hours, you know how scent can soften the nervous system. In the Egyptian world, scent was part of protection, but it was also part of kindness. A warm smell makes a cold reality feel less sharp. Now imagine linen. Linen is everywhere, folded, stacked, draped. It is the color of sand in moonlight, the color of milk, the color of clouds before dawn. It is soft from washing, soft from handling. It carries the faint smell of sun and air. The wrapping begins. A strip is placed, smoothed. Another strip, smoothed. A knot tied gently. A hand presses and releases as if saying, rest. There is no violence in the movement, only patience. If your mind starts to wander, that is okay. Let it wander like a leaf on water. Bring it back, softly, to the linen, to the hands, to the slow rhythm. In some moments, quiet words are spoken, not shouted, not theatrical, murmured like bedtime reassurance. Words meant to guide, to protect, to remind. Whether you believe in those words or not, you can still feel the human need behind them, the need to make the unknown feel less lonely. And then, once the body is prepared, the next kind of care begins. Arranging a space. The tomb is not only a storage chamber, it is a room designed to hold familiarity. Imagine entering it with a lamp. The walls are cool, the floor is smooth, the air feels dry and still, like the inside of a sealed jar. And in that stillness, objects are placed with intention. A jar of water, a basket of food, a folded cloth, a small amulet, a comb, a fan. Not because someone thought the dead would need these things in a literal way, but because the act of placing them is itself a form of love. Have you ever set out something for someone you care about before they arrive? A towel on a bed, a cup on the counter, a pillow fluffed. It's not only practical, it's a message. I thought of you. That message is everywhere in these ancient rooms. And perhaps the most tender items are the simplest. A little bowl, a plain cup, piece of cloth. Because simple things are the ones we reach for when we're tired. Simple things are the ones that help us feel safe. Now let the story move gently toward another detail that feels like a soft lantern. The nested coffins. Sometimes a body was placed inside one coffin, and that coffin inside another, and sometimes another beyond that. Layers that feel almost like a lullaby, repeated in deeper tones. Not to imprison, but to protect. Not to hide, but to hold. It's hard not to feel the emotional truth here. When we love something, we want to wrap it. We want to keep it from harm. We want to create barriers between it and the roughness of the world. And if you have been living in a rough world lately, too much pressure, too many demands, perhaps you also crave layers, a blanket, a closed door, a story told slowly, a safe place to rest. That is what this part of history offers you tonight, an image of layered care. Now let's return to the painted corridors for a moment. Along the walls, the images are not chaotic, they are ordered. They move like a procession. They show boats, stars, offerings, gates, words. Think of them as a gentle GPS, not for the body, but for the mind. A way of saying, here is the path, here is how you stay oriented. In modern life, we do this too. We leave ourselves notes, we set reminders, we mark calendars, we create routines. But the routines we need most are not always productivity routines. Sometimes the most important routine is the one that keeps you from falling apart. The evening cup of tea, the warm shower, the little stretch, the decision to stop scrolling and let the room go dark. The Egyptians built routines around care, not speed, not hustle, care. And here comes a gentle reflection like a wave arriving and retreating. What if the purpose of ritual is not to control the universe, but to soften the human heart? To give it a rhythm when life feels too raw, to give it a script when words are hard to find, to give it a place to put love when love feels heavy. If you've ever attended a quiet memorial, or lit a candle for someone, or kept a small object after goodbye, you already know this. Ritual is a way of saying, I am still connected. Now as we sit with this, let your breathing slow again. In, out. The workshop lamp flickers and the shadows shift gently on the wall. Outside, the Nile keeps moving. Somewhere, a bird calls once and then goes quiet. The night continues its calm work of lowering sound, lowering light, lowering thought. And slowly, the 70 days become less like a process and more like a lullaby. Day after day, care is repeated. Wrap, smooth, tie, place, arrange, step back, whisper, listen, rest. In the modern world, you might not have 70 days to prepare for anything. You might barely have time to prepare for tomorrow, but you can borrow the spirit of the 70 days tonight. You can give yourself a little ritual of care, a slow breath, a softer thought, a choice to stop fighting sleep. Because sleep itself is a ritual. You wash the day away, you close the door, you dim the light, you wrap yourself in linen, your blanket, you let the mind drift into darkness that is not threatening, only restorative. And if the ancient Egyptians believed the soul needed a map, perhaps the modern soul does too. Not a map of the afterlife, but a map out of anxiety. Tonight's map is simple. Breathe, soften, release, rest. Don't forget to subscribe for more peaceful nighttime journeys. And if you're still awake, let your body hear this as a promise. You don't have to carry everything into tomorrow. You can set it down now. In the next part, we will return once more to the tomb walls, not to decode them, but to feel their quiet beauty. and we will let one final soft discovery open like a flower. That the most enduring thing in history is not stone, but gentleness. The lamp in the workshop dims and the night grows wider around it. Outside, the river keeps its slow pace, as if it is counting breaths for the whole land. Inside, the last folds of linen have been smoothed, the last jar placed, the last quiet word spoken, and now everything rests. If you're listening in your own room, you can let that resting reach you. Let your shoulders sink, let your hands be heavy, let your thoughts become less sharp, like stones warmed in the sun and now cooling back into softness. We return again to the tomb, but this time not as visitors searching for something, not as minds hungry for facts. We return as quiet companions. Imagine the entrance behind you, the corridors ahead, the painted walls breathing their mineral colors under torchlight. You are walking slowly. Your steps are careful. And with each step, you feel a little more like you belong in stillness. This is not a place for debate, not a place for proving anything. It is a place for noticing. The wall paintings look different now that you've walked through the story of care. You don't see them as mysterious threats, you see them as a kind of kindness, a visual lullaby, a boat, steady, long, calm, stars, quiet points of order, figures moving with intention. Some texts are like small poems, some are like directions, some are like prayers. And woven through them all is the simplest human wish. May you not be lost. If you have ever been lost, lost in a city, lost in a season of life, lost in grief, you know how healing it is to find a sign, a gentle sign that tells you, this way, you're close, keep going. The Egyptians placed those signs in stone, and yet, even stone is not the greatest treasure in this story. Because the more time you spend here, the clearer something becomes. The tomb is not primarily about death. It is about tenderness. This is the softest discovery, soft enough to bring you closer to sleep. The most enduring thing in history is not gold, not power, not conquest. It is the quiet ways humans care for each other. Think of the objects again in the young king's tomb: sandals, combs, vessels, cloth. None of those things are shocking, they are intimate. They feel like the contents of a drawer, the small universe of a person's daily life. That intimacy is the true marvel. We are so used to history being told as noise, wars, rulers, dramatic collapses, that we forget history is mostly made of ordinary days, of meals, of folding, of waiting, of walking, of caring. And in Egypt's funeral traditions, ordinary care was turned into ceremony, not to make it louder, but to make it last. Now let your mind drift to those painted portraits again, the faces on wooden panels, eyes looking outward through centuries. They are not screaming, they are simply present. They remind you that a human face can hold an entire world. Sometimes the gentlest question is the most powerful. What would it mean to be remembered not for what you produced, but for how you made people feel? Did you make them feel safe? Did you make them feel seen? Did you make them feel less alone? Those are the traces that last. Those are the lanterns. And perhaps this is why the ancient Egyptians cared so much about Ren, the name. Because a name can carry an atmosphere. A name can carry the feeling of a person. Even now, when you hear the name of someone you loved, you don't only think of their biography, you remember their laugh, their patience, the way they held a cup, the way they softened a room. That is what history often misses, but stories can preserve. Tonight's story is trying to preserve that softness. Now let us move very gently toward another quiet image, the forever apartment again. Imagine a tomb chamber, not as a vault, but as a quiet room prepared for a guest. The walls are cool, the corners are neat, the objects are arranged with intention. There is a sense of order that makes the mind relax. In modern life, you might crave that order too, not as perfection, but as relief. A clean surface, a made bed, a drawer where things are placed instead of scattered. Order can be a form of care. And so in Egypt, order became love made visible. Now here is a small thought you can carry with you into sleep like a smooth stone in your pocket. You do not need to be immortal to be meaningful. You do not need to build pyramids to leave a trace. You only need to practice small gentleness, a kind word, a quiet moment of listening, a soft goodbye, a steady presence. Those are the things that outlive us in the lives of others. And if that feels heavy, let it become light again. Because tonight is not about responsibility, it is about comfort. It is about letting the past cradle you instead of challenging you. So let the tomb paintings become less like information and more like atmosphere. Torchlight moves, color glows, dust floats and settles, silence expands. There is no need to remember every detail. Just remember the feeling that someone once cared enough to make a map, that someone once cared enough to fold linen slowly, that someone once cared enough to place water beside a traveler. And tonight, you are also being cared for in a different way, but a real way, by a story, by a voice, by a quiet community of listeners who have chosen softness over noise. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. If you are still awake and if your thoughts begin to tug at you, you can return to one simple image. A pyramid, once bright as a mirror reflecting the sun. A landmark for the mind, a steady triangle of light. And then, as night deepens, the pyramid becomes a silhouette, still present, but no longer demanding attention. It becomes part of the background, like your worries can become background too. They can exist without taking center stage. That is one of sleep's quiet miracles. It gives your mind permission to let the world keep turning without you supervising it. Now another gentle breath, in, out. Imagine the desert wind again, moving over sand with a hush like linen. Imagine the river far away, moving steadily. Imagine the tomb chamber closing softly, the darkness returning like a blanket drawn up around history. Everything is safe, everything is held. In the next part, we will begin to descend even further, not into tombs, but into the softest part of the night, the place where reflection turns into surrender and where the story's last light becomes a sleeping loop, like sun to moon to sun again. The night is deeper now. If you're still listening, it may be because some part of you is enjoying the quiet, and another part is still letting go, slowly, carefully, the way a hand releases a thread without snapping it. So let's make this part of the story even softer. Less like a walk, more like drifting. Picture the desert again, but now it is almost entirely silver and shadow. The dunes are gentle humps under moonlight, like sleeping animals. The wind moves through them with a hush that never sharpens into a gust. In the distance, the pyramids are not bright. They are simply present. Dark triangles against a sky scattered with stars, and above them the same cycle continues. Sun rises, sun sets, moon rises, moon sets, over and over without being asked. This cycle was one of the great comforts for the ancient Egyptians. It was proof that the world could renew itself, that light could disappear and still return, that darkness could be endured because it was not forever. You don't have to believe in the same afterlife to benefit from the same comfort. Because the modern mind, especially a busy mind, often behaves like it is trapped in permanent daylight, always on, always alert, always responding. Sleep is your chance to return to the ancient cycle, to let the sun inside your mind set, to let the moon rise. And so tonight, let's sit in the feeling of cycles, a river flooding and receding, a field turning from brown to green, a candle being lit and then gently blown out, a breath entering and leaving. All of these are loops, all of them are soft. All of them teach the nervous system that change does not have to be frightening. Now allow the story to turn inward, towards something almost whispered. The Egyptians tried to preserve the body, yes, but what they truly wanted to preserve was a sense of belonging. They wanted the dead to feel oriented. They wanted the living to feel less alone. They wanted love to have a place to land. In modern life, we are also searching for belonging, but we often search for it in loud places, social media, endless productivity, constant activity. Tonight, we are searching for it somewhere else, in quiet. Here, belonging is simple. You are listening, you are breathing. You are alive in the night, and you don't have to do anything else. Now remember the question from earlier. If we disregard movies for a moment, what do you think people in the past saw through their eyes when they viewed death? Maybe they saw a bed being made quieter. Maybe they saw a familiar face resting. Maybe they saw hands washing, wrapping, smoothing. Maybe they saw a room arranged with care. They probably saw grief, yes, but they also saw love trying to behave well under pressure. That's the part that matters tonight, because love behaving well under pressure is what calms the nervous system. It says, even here, even now, something gentle remains. Now imagine a family long ago standing in the warm dusk. The sun is low, turning the river into gold. A breeze carries the smell of reeds and smoke. Someone speaks a name softly. Someone pours a little water onto the ground. Someone stands very still, not because they are frozen, but because they are listening for something that cannot be heard with ears. In that stillness, the world does not collapse. The world continues. A bird calls, a child shifts their weight, a boat glides past. The sun sinks, the first star appears. And just like that, the living begin to accept that they can keep living. That is the gentle path from grief to peace, not a sudden leap, but a gradual settling. If you have been grieving anything, not only a person, but a time in your life, a version of yourself, a dream that changed, this is the part of the story that can hold you. It says you can continue quietly. You don't have to force a new chapter. You can let the old chapter close softly, like a book being set down. Now let's offer a small, simple reflection, one that does not ask much of you. In the Egyptian tomb, there were supplies for the traveler: water, bread, cloth. In your life, what are your supplies for the night? Maybe it is your pillow, your blanket, a glass of water nearby, a dim lamp, a voice that doesn't hurry. These are not trivial, these are your modern offerings, your modern forever apartment for rest. And you can arrange them gently without perfection. Just enough to say, I thought of me. If you find it hard to care for yourself, borrow the ancient method. Treat yourself like someone you love. Smooth the blanket, lower the light. Soften the room. Speak your own name kindly. Now, imagine the tomb again, but this time it is not a physical place. It is a metaphor for the part of your mind where memories are stored. Inside that inner chamber, there are paintings, moments from your life. Some are bright, some are faint, some are unfinished. Tonight, you don't need to repaint them. You don't need to organize them. You only need to let them rest. because sleep is a kind of preservation too. It preserves your energy, it preserves your ability to feel, it preserves your capacity to begin again tomorrow. And just as the Egyptians trusted cycles, you can trust this one. After sleep, you will be a little softer, a little clearer, a little more able to carry your life. Now let the pyramid become a symbol again, not of labor, not of stone, but of steadiness, a triangle, simple, stable, a shape that does not move, a landmark in the mind. If your thoughts begin to drift into worries, you can return to the triangle. Inhale up the left side. Exhale down the right side. Rest at the base. A simple shape, a simple breath. And as you breathe, notice how the night itself is doing the work for you. It is dimming the world, it is reducing the number of tasks, it is softening sound, it is lowering temperature, it is inviting your body to stop bracing. You do not have to fight sleep, you can let it arrive. Now another gentle loop, sun to moon, breath in to breath out, waking to sleeping. And here is the heart of this reflection, said as quietly as possible. The most beautiful things often arrive in silence. Not the loud achievements, not the dramatic moments, but the small, steady kindness that we barely notice until we need it most. Tonight, that kindness can be your own decision to rest. If this story brought you calm, leave a gentle comment for yourself. A simple sentence, something like, I am allowed to sleep, or I did enough today, or I am safe in this moment. And if you don't want to comment, you can still let the message settle inside you like a quiet stone on the riverbed. In the next part, we will begin the final descent, the last softening, the last release, returning to the desert night, the green shade, the tomb's quiet order, and letting them all fold into a closing loop that feels like being tucked in. Now the night has the texture of deep water. If you are still listening, you are already doing something quietly courageous. You are choosing softness in a world that often rewards only speed. And softness, as you know, is not weakness. It is the gentle strength of letting the shoulders drop, letting the jaw unclench, letting the mind stop rehearsing tomorrow. So let's bring our story back to a room. Not a tomb chamber this time, not a corridor painted with mineral blues and warm ochres, but the room you are in right now, or the room you wish you were in. A bedroom, a car seat, a couch in a quiet corner of the house. Wherever you are, let it become your forever apartment for the next few hours. Not forever, of course, just long enough to rest. The ancient Egyptians arranged their rooms for the dead with water, bread, cloth, and small familiar objects. You can arrange your room for the living with the same kindness. A glass of water within reach. A blanket that feels like linen, warmed by the day. A light that is low, not interrogating. A phone turned face down, like a door gently closed. And if the day has left noise inside you, let this room be the place where noise becomes background. Imagine closing an invisible stone door, not to trap yourself, but to protect your quiet. Outside that door are emails, errands, conversations, decisions. They can wait. Inside the door is a softer world, breath, warmth, darkness, safety. In the tombs, paint and words worked like lanterns. In your room, small rituals do the same. The way you settle your shoulders, the way you let your tongue rest behind your teeth, the way you allow your eyes to soften even if they remain open. These are not minor things. They are signals to your nervous system. We are safe enough to stop bracing. And as you settle, you might notice a familiar temptation to review the day, to replay a sentence, to revise an outcome, to draft tomorrow in your mind like a speech you must deliver perfectly. But tonight, You can treat those thoughts the way the ancients treated offerings. You can place them down gently. Picture a shelf inside your mind. On it, you place one jar labeled work, another jar labeled family, another labeled money, another labeled health, another labeled the thing I wish I'd said. You don't have to open them. You don't have to fix their contents. You are simply giving them a place to sit so they don't have to roll around your chest all night. You might be surprised by how soothing it is to set something down without resolving it. The Great Pyramid once shone like a mirror, bright enough to catch the sun and send it back across the desert. That kind of brightness can feel like daytime, the part of life that asks for output, decisions, to proof. But at night, the pyramid becomes a silhouette, still present, still steady, yet no longer demanding your attention. Let your worries do the same. They can become silhouettes. They can be there, but they do not have to shine. Now, return to the idea of Ren, the name as a lantern. If names guided the traveler in the ancient imagination, perhaps names can guide you too, not toward more thinking, but toward steadiness. You can name what you feel softly, without judgment. Tired, overfull, lonely, relieved, uncertain. Naming is not the same as solving. Naming is simply holding a small light up to the inner room so you don't trip over what you carry. And then, once it is named, you can let it rest. Or you can even say your own name in your mind, as if you are speaking to someone you care about, not in a formal way, in a kind way. A reminder that you are here and that you matter, even when you are quiet. If you'd like, take a slow inhale, as if you are breathing in warm lamplight. Let the exhale go as if you are releasing a ribbon into water. No effort, no performance. Just a soft letting. Somewhere in the desert, wind is brushing sand, smoothing yesterday's footprints into a new surface. Let your breath do the same to your thoughts. Let it smooth, let it erase the sharp edges, let it make room for a fresh morning later. And somewhere along the Nile, water is moving, not fast, not slow, just moving. If your mind is stuck, you don't have to force it open. You can let it move by being gentle. You can let sleep do the work that thinking cannot do tonight. Remember the painted corridors, the boats and stars, the steady procession of images that meant you will not be lost. Tonight you don't need to travel through gates or deserts. Your only journey is from alertness to rest, and you already have the map. The map is simple. Dim the light, soften the body, loosen the face, let the breath slow, allow the mind to drift. If a thought returns, let it pass like a torch flame flickering against stone. Notice it, then let it fade. The tomb walls did not chase the flame, they simply held their color until the light returned. In this quiet corner of the night, you are not the only one listening. Somewhere another person is letting go too, another tired mind, another busy heart, another set of shoulders learning to drop. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. If this story brought you calm, you can leave a gentle comment for yourself. Just one line, like placing a smooth stone on a windowsill. And if you'd like more nights like this, don't forget to subscribe for more peaceful nighttime journeys. But you don't have to do anything right now. You can do it tomorrow in daylight. Tonight is for sleep. Now let's close the loop the way the ancients loved to close loops. Sun to moon, river to sea, breath in to breath out, waking to sleeping. Imagine the pyramid once more, dressed in pale limestone, reflecting the last light of day. Then imagine the light fading and the stone becoming calm and dark, blending into the night. The world does not break when the light goes. The world rests. And then later, the light returns. You are allowed the same. So let your forehead smooth. Let your shoulders soften, let your hands open, let your thoughts become less interested in conclusions. In the ancient rooms, linen was laid carefully, layer by layer, until everything felt held. Let your blanket be that linen, let your bed be that quiet chamber of comfort, let your breathing be the soft ritual that repeats until you drift away. And if you fall asleep before this part ends, that's perfect. The story will keep holding the night for you, even as you go. If you'd like, imagine one last gentle scene before we let everything fade into sleep. You are standing at the edge of the desert, where the sand meets a faint path of stone. The sky is wide and calm, and the stars feel like quiet punctuation in a sentence that never hurries. Behind you, the pyramids rest in silhouette, steady shapes that have learned to be patient with time. In front of you, the world of the living waits, warm rooms, soft lamps, familiar corners. You begin to walk, not away from history, but back toward your own life. And as you walk, you notice how little you need to carry. The desert does not ask for explanations. It does not demand that you prove anything. It simply offers space. So you let your thoughts become smaller. You let them take the shape of simple objects, like the things placed in a tomb. A small worry becomes a jar you can set down. A lingering regret becomes a folded cloth you can place neatly on a shelf. A heavy responsibility becomes a stone you don't have to lift tonight. And then you do something very modern yet very ancient at the same time. You listen, not to podcasts, not to news, not to the bright noise of the day, just to your own inner weather. You notice where your body still holds tension. You notice where your breath is shallow, and you let that noticing be kind. In a way, it's like the scientists who learn to sense hidden spaces inside stone without breaking it, learning by quiet observation, by patience, by letting subtle signals speak. You can do that with yourself. You don't have to tear anything open to understand it. You can let yourself be a mystery that is treated gently. If a question rises, what happens next? What if I fail? What if I'm forgotten? You can answer it the way the night answers the desert, with softness. Not a debate, not a speech, just a simple reassurance. For now, you are here. For now, you are safe enough to rest. Somewhere in the stone of the Great Pyramid, modern scientists learn to listen for hidden space without breaking anything. They let invisible messengers pass through rock and quietly reported what the eye could not see. You can borrow that gentleness tonight. You can listen to your own body without forcing it, without prying, without judgment. Notice the weight of your head. Notice the warmth under your blanket. Notice the slow tide of breath. If there is a hollow space in you, an unanswered question, a missing name, a worry you cannot solve, let it remain a calm chamber for now. Sleep does not require certainty. Sleep only asks for permission. Let that noticing be enough and let everything else drift farther away softly. For now, in this room you return to, in this gentle darkness, in this quiet hour, let the day set like the sun behind the dunes. Let the moon rise inside you. The night has been listening the whole time. It has listened to your breath, to the small shifts of your body, to the way your thoughts have tried, now and then, to return to their familiar loops. And each time they return, the night does not scold you. It simply offers the same invitation again. Soften, release, rest. So in this part, we won't walk far, we won't open new doors. We will simply settle as if we are lowering ourselves into warm water, letting gravity do what it does best. Imagine once more the desert beyond the city. Not the desert of danger, but the desert of quiet space. The sand is cool and fine, the moonlight lays across it like pale silk. Somewhere, a single breeze moves over the dunes and you can almost hear the soft brushing sound, like linen being smoothed, like pages being turned very slowly. In the distance, the pyramid stands in silhouette. A dark triangle, steady and unbothered. It does not ask you to understand it. It does not ask you to admire it. It simply exists, and in that existing, it teaches you something gentle. You don't have to perform to be real. Now let your attention drift from the pyramid to the sky. The stars feel far away, but their steadiness is close. If your mind is tired, you can lean on that steadiness the way you lean on a headboard or a pillow. The sky is wide enough to hold whatever you didn't finish today. And somewhere below that sky, along the old path of the river, lamps would once have glowed in small homes. Clay lamps, oil lamps, low flames that breathed, not flickered wildly. In those rooms, people sat close. They spoke softly. They listened for the night's cues, the way you're listening now. If we disregard movies for a moment, what do you think people in the past saw through their eyes when they viewed death? Perhaps they saw a body at rest, yes, but perhaps they also saw family learning to be gentle. A bowl of water placed down, a cloth folded, a name spoken in a voice that trembled and then steadied. Perhaps they saw the ordinary courage of continuing, of keeping the lamp lit even when the heart felt dim. In that ancient world, preservation was a kind of promise. But the promise was not meant to keep anyone awake, it was meant to bring peace. It said, "You will be cared for, you will be remembered, you will not be lost." Tonight you can borrow that promise for yourself. You can tell your mind, quietly, you will be okay. Not because everything is solved, but because you are allowed to rest, even when life is unfinished. Imagine the forever apartment again, the tomb, as a room arranged with calm. Not a place of fear, but a place of order. A jar of water, a small basket, linen folded with care, a simple lamp. It is the opposite of clutter. It is the opposite of rush. It is a place where nothing is shouting. If you want, let your imagination drift to scent. A hint of resin, warm and sweet as if wood has been kissed by sunlight. A faint thread of incense, not thick, not heavy, just enough to soften the air. Scent is one of the gentlest ways time travels. A single smell can open a door in the mind without any force. In some tombs, long after the pyramids, portraits were placed with the dead, faces painted with calm eyes, as if the person is simply resting, as if they are still part of the household. Tonight you don't have to stare at those eyes. Just let the idea of them exist, the past looking back without judgment, saying quietly, "I was here, and you are here too." And if the ancient builders left quiet spaces inside stone, rooms of air that even modern tools can only sense by listening, then you can leave quiet spaces inside yourself as well. Not every feeling must be opened tonight. Not every question needs an answer right now. Some chambers are allowed to remain sealed, not because they are dangerous, but because rest is also a kind of wisdom. Now translate that calm order into your own space. Maybe your room is not perfect. Maybe there are clothes on a chair, dishes in the sink, a to-do list in your head. That's okay. Tonight, you don't need perfection to sleep. You only need one small corner of order inside you, one shelf where you can place the day down gently. So choose one thought that has been tugging at you, and imagine setting it into a jar, put a lid on it, place it on a shelf. You can return to it tomorrow in daylight when your hands are steadier. Choose another thought, maybe a conversation, maybe a worry, and fold it like linen. Fold it once, then twice. Place it beside the jar. You are not denying it. You are simply storing it safely for now. And if a third thought arrives, you can treat it like water. Let it be present, then let it flow away. You don't have to grip it. Here is a small truth the ancient world can offer the modern one. Many things are easier after sleep. Not because sleep fixes everything magically, but because it restores the part of you that can meet life with softness instead of sharpness. Sleep gives you a fresh inner room. Think of the Nile after a long day of heat. At dusk, the surface cools and smooths. The bright glare becomes a dark mirror. The river doesn't argue with the sun, it simply changes when the hour changes. You don't have to keep shining tonight, you can dim. Think of a boat drifting near the bank, tied loosely, rocking almost imperceptibly. No one is asking it to prove its worth, it is allowed to be still, and in that stillness it remains a boat. You remain you, even when you stop striving. And if you carry a tender memory, you can let it be one of your supplies. A small scene, a kitchen light at midnight, a friend's laugh in a hallway, a hand resting on your shoulder, a warm drink on a cold morning. These memories are not distractions, they are lanterns. They guide you back to safety. In the tomb corridors, the painted images were not meant to be read in a rush. They were meant to be followed step by step as a map. Tonight, your map is even simpler. It is a map made of sensations. Feel the weight of your head. Feel the support beneath you. Feel the air moving in and out. Feel the small temperature changes on your skin. These are gentle facts. They don't argue. They don't demand. They simply are. And when your mind tries to jump forward, toward tomorrow's tasks, toward next week's worries, you can bring it back softly to the present, the way you would guide a child back to bed. No anger, no lecture, just a calm hand and a quiet voice. You might whisper internally, "Not now, not now. The desert does not do tomorrow, it does tonight. The river does not rush, it flows. The pyramid does not hustle, it stands. If you feel lonely in the dark, let the story remind you. You are part of a quiet circle. Somewhere, another listener is drifting too. Another breath is slowing. Another forehead is smoothing. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. Now, imagine one more scene. Very simple, very safe. A path runs between sand and shade. Green is rare in the desert, but a line of trees can create a corridor of relief. You step beneath it. The air cools, leaves move softly overhead. The world becomes dimmer and kinder. This is the gentle gate of sleep. Not a gate made of iron, not a gate that clangs. A gate made of shade, of lowered light, of slower breath. A gate that opens when you stop pushing. As you stand in that shade, you can let gratitude arrive without effort. Gratitude does not have to be loud. It can be as small as noticing that you are here, that you made it tonight, that you have a place to rest, even if it is imperfect, that you have a story to lean on. If tonight's story reminded you of a beautiful memory, feel free to share it below whenever you're awake and ready. For now, you don't have to move. You can simply let the memory pass through like a warm breeze. Now, one more slow breath, in and out. Let the jaw loosen again. Let the shoulders drop again. Let the stomach soften. Let the muscles around the eyes melt. Imagine the tomb door closing, not with a thud, but with a soft settling of stone, the way a book closes when you're done reading for the night. Inside, the painted walls remain, the names remain, the offerings remain, everything is held, nothing needs your attention. Outside, the desertin continues under moonlight, the wind brushes sand, the stars keep their quiet arrangement, the cycle continues, sun to moon, breath in to breath out, and in your own room you can become part of that cycle now. You can let the mind dim, you can let the body sink, you can let sleep come like a slow tide, rising quietly around the shore of your thoughts until the edges disappear. If a last worry tries to speak, you can answer it with the gentlest sentence you know. I can rest now. I can rest now. If you fall asleep mid-sentence, let it be a blessing. The night will continue breathing for you, patient, steady, and kind tonight. And as you repeat it, let it become less like words and more like rhythm, like water, like wind, like linen, like the softest treasure of all. A calm heart in the dark. The story is getting quieter now. Not because it is ending with a sharp line, but because it is folding itself the way linen folds, softly, neatly, without resistance, like a lamp dimming until only warmth remains, like the last ripples on a river smoothing into still water. If you are still awake, you don't need to hold on tightly. You can let go. The night is doing the work. Imagine the desert one last time, not as a place you must cross, but as a place that holds you. The dunes are calm waves under moonlight. Shadows are long and gentle. Wind passes over the surface like a hand that knows exactly how light it needs to be. In the distance, the pyramid rests in silhouette, steady and quiet. It once reflected the sun like a mirror, bright and clean and almost unbelievable. And now it is simply a shape, still meaningful, still present, but no longer shining. It has returned to the night. Let your mind do the same. You don't need to shine right now. You don't need to solve. You don't need to prove. You only need to rest. Somewhere far away, along the old ribbon of the Nile, water continues its patient movement. It doesn't worry about tomorrow. It doesn't worry about yesterday. It simply flows. It carries the lesson that has held Egypt through centuries. Everything moves in cycles, and the cycle can be trusted. Sun to moon, flood to recede, breath in to breath out, wake to sleep. In the tomb rooms we visited together, the walls carried a painted map, boats, stars, steady processions of images meant to guide the traveler. Tonight you have your own map, and it is simpler than any hieroglyph. The map is your breath. In, out. And with each breath, you can feel the day loosening its grip. If there is a thought that still clings, one worry, one unfinished sentence, imagine placing it in a small jar, the way ancient hands placed offerings. Put a lid on it, set it on a shelf. You can come back to it in daylight. Tonight, it is stored safely. If there is a feeling that feels heavy, imagine folding it like linen. Fold once, fold twice, place it beside the jar. You are not throwing it away, you are simply setting it down with care, because care is the true thread that runs through this whole story. Care in the slow 70 days of preparation, care in the linen wraps, care in the jars of water and baskets of bread, care in the way names were preserved, Ren, as lanterns that kept a person from feeling lost. And if you ever doubt whether the past can offer anything gentle, remember this. The greatest monuments were not only stone, they were the quiet habits that held people through grief. A name spoken softly, a small flame lit at dusk, a room arranged with order, a story told slowly. Tonight you are participating in that same human practice. You are letting the story hold you until your body can rest. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. Now allow one final reflection to arrive. Very simple, very light. The ancient Egyptians did not preserve bodies because they loved death. They preserved because they loved life. They wanted love to have continuity. They wanted memory to have a home. And perhaps that is the gentlest truth you can carry into sleep. You don't need to be perfect to be worthy of care. You don't need to be finished to be allowed to rest. You can be tired, you can be weathered, you can be uncertain, and still you belong here in the quiet. If you are in America, maybe your day was full of noise, traffic, meetings, screens, responsibilities. Maybe your mind has been working like a bright lamp for too long. Let it dim now. Let it become the kind of light that doesn't wake you, only warms you. Imagine your room as that forever apartment for the night. Not a place of pressure, but a place of permission. A place where the only goal is softness. If you can, let your jaw relax one last time. Let your shoulders drop one last time. Let your hands open one last time. Your breathing is enough. And if you are already half asleep, if the words are drifting past you like wind, that's perfect. You don't need to follow every sentence. You can let the voice become background like rain, like a fan, like the hush of sand. And now we close the loop, gently. The desert wind smooths the dunes, erasing sharp footprints. The linen wraps settle into stillness. The tomb door rests closed, holding its quiet paintings and names, safe in the dark. The pyramid stands as a steady silhouette beneath the stars. The river continues to flow, unseen but faithful, and your body, here and now, is allowed to drift into sleep. If tonight's story reminded you of a beautiful memory, feel free to share it below, whenever morning comes and you feel ready. And if this story brought you calm, leave a gentle comment for yourself. Something small and kind. Don't forget to subscribe for more peaceful nighttime journeys, but not now, not tonight. Tonight is for rest. So let the last light fade. Let the last thought soften. Let the last muscle unclench. And if you like, carry one final sentence into the dark, like a warm stone in your palm. I am safe enough to sleep.
Our story pauses here. Every visual and word you've experienced was assisted by AI, yet guided and perfected by sincere human emotion. We hope this harmony of history and technology has crafted a beautiful dream for you tonight. Let go and drift deep into sleep. Good night.